All right, so we are to the solving for a variable when it's inside an absolute value. All right, so when it's inside an absolute value, this is pretty simple because the problem's done the same way almost every single time, which makes it pretty easy. However, what you have to know is that the absolute value must be by itself on any side of the equal sign before you can do anything. Okay, so let's blow this up here and let's go ahead and get started. So number one, if you notice that the absolute value of x is completely by itself on the left side of the equal sign, meaning there's not like a plus 2 beside it or like a minus 3 beside it. There's not a 4 in front of it, which would mean like 4 times the absolute value. There's also not a division line or a fraction line and a 4 underneath it, which would mean the absolute value divided by 4. So meaning it's completely by itself on the left side. So when it's completely by itself, now we can actually solve for it. And here's the process of solving for it. Whatever is on the inside of the absolute value, it does not matter what it is. Whatever is on the inside of the absolute value, you're going to write it down twice. So x and x. Now, you're going to set it equal to what's on the other side of the equal sign, meaning that's a 2. So I'm going to set it equal to 2. Well, that was pretty easy. All right. For the second one, okay, whatever is on the other side of the equal sign, you're going to set it equal to the opposite sign of whatever is on the other side of the equal sign. So I'm on the other one, I'm going to set it equal to negative 2. And obviously, we've already got our answer. X equals 2, x equals negative 2. And if you put it inside the absolute value, it actually does make sense. So let's start with the first one, 2. What's the absolute value of 2? Remember, absolute value turns everything positive. If it's already positive, it just keeps it positive. So the absolute value of 2 is 2. 2 does equal 2. So let's try the negative one. The absolute value of negative 2 is also positive 2. 2 does equal 2. So they both check out. All right. Number 2. Again, these all work the same way. So first, I'm going to take what's on the inside, the absolute value, and then I'm going to set it equal to what's on the other side. So m equals 14. Well, that was easy. All right. Then on my second arrow, I'm going to bring it down. And I'm going to set it equal to the opposite sign of whatever's on the other side. So not 14, but negative 14. And boom, I have my two answers. I know, super simple. You're like, wow, that's easy. Okay, now we come to number 3. All right, little bit different. So on number 3, it works the same way. So I'm going to take what's on the inside, 5z, and I'm going to set it equal to whatever's on the other side, which is 40. Now, we actually have to solve for z here, meaning we have to divide by 5, so z equals 8. No problem. Now, we're going to take what's on the inside of the absolute value. We're going to write it down again, but this time we're going to set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side, so negative 40. This time. And then we solve for z. So z would also equal negative 8. So we have 2 answers. And you're going to have 2 answers on the majority of these types of problems for absolute value. All right, number 4. So take what's on the inside, negative 7a, set it equal to what's on the other side, 28. Solve. Divide by negative 7. That was tough. Equals negative 4. All right. Now, take what's on the inside and set it equal to the opposite sign of what's on the other side. So instead of 28, set it equal to negative 28. All right? We'll divide by negative 7 again. Remember, negative over negative is a positive, so A would equal also positive 4. And there's our two answers. All right? Number 5. All right? Not too difficult. So, again, whatever is on the inside of the absolute value, it does not matter what it is. All right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to write it down and set it equal to what's on the other side. So 8. Then I'm going to solve. Well, this is easy. Subtract 1. You get D equals 7. Then, for the second arrow, I'm going to take what's on the inside. I'm going to write it down again. But this time, I'm going to set it equal to the negative what's on the other side. So instead of 8, set it equal to negative 8 and solve. So still subtract 1, and you get D equals negative 9. So our answers are D equals 7 and D equals negative 9. Number 6. So take what's on the inside, write it down. Set it equal to what's on the other side, and solve. So plus 3, we get W equals 7. All right? Second arrow, write it down again, but this time set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side. All right? So add 3. We get W equals negative 1. And that's our answer. Or should I say answers. Number 7, getting a little bit more difficult, but not a lot. All right, so once again, these all work the same way. So take what's on the inside, write it down, set it equal to what's on the other side. Then take what's on the inside again, write it down, and set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side. And now you've got both equations, and now you solve. So here we're going to subtract 2. We get 4n equals 32. Divide by 4, n equals 8. All right? So now we go the other way. So we're going to subtract 2. We get 4n equals negative 36. Divide by 4. And our answer is n equals negative 9. So what you're seeing hopefully is, wow, all I have to do is write what's on the inside of the absolute value twice. Set it equal to whatever this number is, and then set it equal to the negative of whatever this number is. Or if it starts out negative, okay, depending on the problem, okay, that'll come later. All right, so first, we got number 8. Okay, so number 8, same principle. Take what's on the inside and write it down. Set it equal to what's on the other side. So now we take what's on the inside again and write it down. Set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side. And then we solve for both. So here we're going to add 5. So we get negative 2v equals 22. Divide by negative 2, v equals negative 11. And now we go the other one. So we're going to add 5. And we get negative 2v equals negative 17 plus 5 would be negative 12. Divide by negative 2. Remember, negative over negative is a positive. V equals 6. And there's your first 4 problems first 8 problems at a glance. All right, now this is where we get to where there is what we call stuff on the outside of the absolute value bars, okay? So meaning, what if there is stuff outside the absolute value bars, okay? We get the absolute value by itself. That's what we do, okay? Regardless of whatever you have to do, get the absolute value by itself. So let's go to number 9, all right? So first thing, automatically we see that there is something else on the same side as the absolute value. Well, we have to get it away from it, meaning this positive 2. So in order to get this positive 2 away from the absolute value, what we have to do is subtract it. So that's now gone. We get the absolute value of C now equals 10. So now the absolute value is by itself, and then we do literally what we just did. Take what's on the inside and write it down. Set it equal to the other side. Take what's on the inside, write it down again, set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side. And you can clearly see this was an easy problem. It gave us the answer pretty much right at the start. Or should I say both answers? All right, number 10. So here we are, okay? So we're looking at it, and we see, we have a negative 8 that's on the same side. We need to get rid of that negative 8. So meaning we're going to add 8. Now that's gone. We get the absolute value of y equals negative 5 plus 8 is 3. And now we go about solving the absolute value because now it's by itself. So meaning we write what's on the inside, set it equal to what's on the other side. Then we write what's on the inside again, set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side. And again, clearly it shows us the answers right off the bat. Okay, number 11. Now what we have is we have a number directly on the outside of the absolute value. Okay, so what that means is it's multiplication. 6 times the absolute value of x. So how do we get rid of that 6 in the front? Because remember, the absolute value has to be by itself. Well, you get rid of anything multiplication-wise, you get rid of it by dividing. So we're going to divide by 6. And you can see that that's now gone. We have the absolute value of x equals 24 divided by 6 is 4. Now, the absolute value is by itself. All right, it equals 4. So take what's on the inside and write it down. Set it equal to what's on the other side. Take what's on the inside, write it down again. Set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side. And again, clearly, we have our answers pretty close to not far into the problem. Okay, number 12. All right, so we can see that we have a negative 2 in front of the absolute value. We need to get rid of that. That means that the absolute value is not by itself. So what we need to do is that negative 2 is right in front of it, which means multiplication. We need to divide by negative 2. All right, so that's now gone. And we get the absolute value of z plus 3 equals negative 14 divided by negative 2. Negative over negative is a positive. That would be 7. All right, so take what's on the inside, write it down, and meant to do a z, and then set it equal to what's on the other side. Take what's on the inside and write it down again, set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side. And then solve for both. So here we're going to subtract 3, z equals 4. And then on the other side, subtract 3, z equals negative 10. And we have our two answers. All right, 13. So this takes us back a little bit towards the very first of the semester. So this looks hard, okay? You're like, holy cow, we had a fraction with an absolute value, but remember, it's not, okay? Anytime that you have a fraction, all right, and you need to get rid of the bottom of the fraction, you just multiply by what's on the bottom of the fraction. So in order to get rid of this 6, because the absolute value is not by itself, we just need to multiply by 6 on each side. And what that does is that cancels out the bottom, cancels out the bottom of the fraction. All right, so we get the absolute value of 2w minus 4 now equals 18. Okay, and now we're ready to go. All right, so meaning take what's on the inside, write it down, set it equal to what's on the other side. Take what's on the inside, write it down again, but set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side. And now you've got your two equations. All right, so here we're going to add 4. 2w equals 22, divide by 2, y equals 11. And then on the other side, okay, we're going to add 4. 2w now equals negative 14. Divide by 2. And we get w equals negative 7. And therefore, we have both of our answers. $14. Get a little bit more complicated. All right. Now, a lot of people look at this and they're like, all right, the absolute value is clearly not by itself. It's got a negative 10 in front of it, which means multiplication, and then it's got a minus 3 behind it. So we got to do a couple things here to get rid of this. All right. So which one do I do first? Well, it's kind of like this right here. If you looked at this problem like this, meaning if the absolute value was an x, obviously you would add the 3 over first, right? Because that would be a two-step problem. Well, it's not any different here. Meaning, first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the 3 to the other side. Because that's the easiest thing to get rid of first. So now we've got negative 10 times the absolute value of h plus 5 now equals negative 80. Second thing we need to do, we need to get rid of the negative 10. So in order to get rid of the negative 10, we need to divide by negative 10. So that now cancels. Remember, negative over negative is a positive. So we get the absolute value of h plus 5 equals 80 divided by 10 is 8. So now the absolute value is by itself. When it's by itself, now it becomes easy. Take what's on the inside, write it down, set it equal to what's on the other side. Take what's on the inside again, write it down again, set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side, and then solve for both equations. So here we would subtract 5, h equals 3. And then over here we would subtract 5, and we would get h equals negative 13. And that's our answers. $15. Very similar problem here. Okay, so again, we kind of treat the absolute value sort of like an x. So meaning if I did this right here, everybody would look at this and I would say, what do we do first? Well, you would say, Coach Baldwin, that looks like a two-step equation. I'm going to add 6 and then divide by 7. So you would already know which steps to do. Okay, well, you kind of treat the absolute value sort of like an x. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add 6 to the other side. That's now gone. We get 7 times the absolute value of 4n plus 8 now equals 112. Next thing we need to do is divide by 7 to get rid of that 7. So now we have the absolute value of 4n plus 8. All right, and then 112 divided by 7 is going to equal 16. All right, so now the absolute value is completely by itself, and now we can go about our process of solving for the n on the inside. So take what's on the inside, write it down exactly as it is, and set it equal to the number on the other side. Then take it, write it down again, but set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side, like so. And now we solve for n for both equations. So here we would subtract 8. 4n equals 8 divided by 4, n equals 2. So there's one answer. Then we go to the other equation. Subtract 8. We get 4n equals negative 24. Divide by 4, n equals negative 6. And we have our two answers. Here's a fun one. Okay, number 16. Same process. All right? So first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of the negative 24. So we're going to add it to the other side. And we're going to have to make sure we watch our negatives here. All right, so we get 3 over 2, and whoops, absolute value. 3 over 2 times the absolute value of 4r, minus 4 equals negative 21 plus 24 is 3. All right, so now what we have to do is we have to get rid of the 3 over 2. And to get rid of the 3 over 2, what we need to do is we need to divide by 3 over 2. So that's now gone. And then in your calculator, if you punch in 3 divided by 3 over 2, you would get 2. So we have the absolute value of 4r minus 4 equals 2. All right, so now the absolute value is by itself, all right? So now that it's by itself, we can go about solving it. So we take what's on the inside and write it down. Set it equal to what's on the other side. Take what's on the inside again, write it down again, but set it equal to the negative of what's on the other side, or the other sign that's on the other side. Now that you've got your two equations, now you go ahead and solve. So add 4. We get 4r equals 6. And then divide by 4. And then r equals, so reduce your fraction. And r equals 3 over 2. Yes, you can have a fraction answer. All right. Okay, now we go to the next one. All right, so looking at the next one, we're going to add 4. All right, we get 4r equals 2. and then divide by 4. Okay, 2 over 4 is 1/2. So yeah, you can get 2 fraction answers on this. And a lot of times they're not like really tough fractions, but I mean, you can get a fraction answer. And you can obviously get a fraction answer for both of them. 17 and 18, last 2 problems on this video. All right, so I'm gonna blow up 17 here. Now, rule is, and a lot of students don't catch this, and they want to like slap themselves because they do so much more work, and then when they get to the end, they're like, oh, I just noticed this. Meaning, number 17 is actually literally a 2-word answer that you don't even have to do any work to. So here's what I mean by that. If you look at number 17, you can take any number and plug it in for x. It doesn't matter what number it is. Okay, so I could say like, I could say 6. Any number that you plug in, if you take the absolute value of that number, it's never going to equal a negative number because absolute value turns everything positive. So regardless of whatever I put in here, it's going to turn positive once I take the absolute value. A positive number can never equal a negative number. Because you guys see how this, you see how this 6 is negative right here? So an absolute value can never equal a negative number. So meaning, if you see that the absolute value is completely by itself, completely alone, and it equals a negative number, you already know it's no solution. You don't have to do any work at all. Why? Because an absolute value will never equal a negative number. Because absolute values turn anything and everything positive. A positive number can never equal a negative number. That's why it's no solution. All right? So we come over here to number 18. And we look at the problem and we see, so we have to get rid of a negative 3. So we're thinking, okay, we just need to divide. And you're right. So you would divide by negative 3. And we get the absolute value of 2x plus 1 equals 21 divided by negative 3 is negative 7. So now you take a look at it and hopefully it rings a bell. Because once again, absolute value that's by itself, all right, which is what we have now. Whatever I put on the inside of that absolute value in for x, whatever number I put in for x, it's not going to matter whether it's positive or negative. Because in the end, it's going to turn the whole thing on the inside positive. Well, look at what we have on the other side. We have a negative 7. All right? A positive number can never equal a negative number. All right? So meaning, and I drew this plus sign because it can be any number that I put in. It can be a negative number that I put in. Meaning I could put in negative 500 billion million. It's not going to matter. Whenever I take the absolute value of negative 500 billion million times 2 plus 1, it's going to turn it positive. A positive number can never equal a negative number. So therefore, an absolute value that turns everything positive can never equal a negative number. So, no solution. No work needed. All right. So there are the next 8 problems at a glance. All right, hopefully this video has helped you guys out. and hopefully you'll be able to refer to this to do the problems on the assignment.